The telegram arrived on a Tuesday morning in August 1883, and Adelaide Owens knew before her stepmother Constance tore. It opened that her life was about to change in ways she could not yet imagine. "He has agreed," Constance said, her thin lips curling into something that resembled satisfaction more than joy. "Mr. Thornton Barrett will arrive in Gonzales next week to finalize the arrangement." Adelaide's hands stilled over the bread dough she had been kneading, flour dusting her fingers like snow in summertime. "What arrangement?" Constance folded the telegram with precise movements, tucking it into her apron pocket. "You are 20 years old, Adelaide. Your father left debts when he died, debts I cannot pay on my own. Mr. Barrett is a cattle baron with holdings throughout Texas. He needs a wife, and he is willing to pay handsomely for one of good breeding." The words hit Adelaide like a physical blow. Her father had been dead only 6 months, taken by pneumonia during an unusually cold February. She had mourned him properly, worn black, tended his grave. And now Constance, the woman her father had married only 3 years prior, was selling her like livestock. "You cannot be serious," Adelaide whispered. "I am perfectly serious. Mr. Barrett will pay $500 for you. That will settle your father's debts and leave enough for me to live comfortably. You should be grateful. He is wealthy, established." Many women would consider themselves fortunate. Adelaide looked at her stepmother, really looked at her, and saw nothing but cold calculation in those pale eyes. "And if I refuse, then we will both starve. The bank will take this house. We will have nothing." Constance moved closer, her voice dropping to something almost conspiratorial. "Do not be foolish, Adelaide. Love is a luxury we cannot afford. Security is what matters." That evening, Adelaide walked through Gonzales as the sun painted the sky in shades of amber and rose. The town was small but growing, situated along the Guadalupe River, where cattlemen drove their herds north and farmers worked the rich Texas soil. She had lived here all her life, knew every shop and face. The thought of leaving with a stranger, of being purchased like property, made her stomach twist. She found herself outside the Silver Star Saloon, not the sort of place a respectable woman ventured, but Adelaide had stopped caring about propriety the moment she learned she was for sale. Through the dusty windows, she could see men playing cards, drinking whiskey, laughing over private jokes. "Evening, Miss Owens." Adelaide turned to find Kellan Sawyer leaning against the hitching post, his hat tipped back to reveal dark hair and eyes the color of strong coffee. She knew him by reputation. He worked the ranches around Gonzales, took odd jobs, never stayed in one place too long. He was perhaps 25, with the kind of weathered face that spoke of hard living and honest work. "Mr. Sawyer," she acknowledged, surprised he knew her name. "You look troubled." He said it as simple fact, not prying. Something about his directness loosened the words she had been holding back all day. "My stepmother is selling me to a cattle baron. He arrives next week to collect his purchase." Kellan straightened, his easy posture disappearing. "She is doing what? You heard correctly. Apparently I am worth $500 to a man named Thornton Barrett. I am to be his wife whether I wish it or not." The anger that crossed Kellan's face was swift and genuine. "That is not legal. You cannot sell a person." "No, but you can arrange a marriage and accept money for it. The law sees it differently when it is couched in terms of bride, price, and settlement." Adelaide heard the bitterness in her own voice. "My father left debts. Constance sees me as a convenient solution." Kellan was quiet for a long moment, his jaw working as though chewing on thoughts too bitter to swallow. "When does this Barrett arrive?" "Friday next." "That gives us time." Adelaide blinked. "Time for what?" "To make sure this sale never happens." Kellan met her eyes, and Adelaide saw something fierce and protective there that made her heart stumble. "If you want out, I will help you, but I need to know right now if you are willing to fight for your freedom." She should have been cautious, should have asked questions, demanded explanations. But Adelaide had spent her whole life being careful and proper, and where had it gotten her? Sold to the highest bidder by a woman who cared nothing for her. "Yes," she said, "I want to fight." Kellan nodded once, decisive. "Meet me tomorrow at dawn by the old oak near the river. Bring whatever you can carry. We have work to do." Adelaide barely slept that night. She lay in her narrow bed, listening to the house settle and Constance's light snoring through the thin walls. Her mind raced with possibilities and fears. She was trusting a man she barely knew, risking everything on the word of a cowboy with no permanent home. But what was the alternative? A loveless marriage to a stranger who saw her as property. When the first gray light of dawn crept through her window, Adelaide rose and dressed quickly in her most practical clothing. She packed a small bag with essentials: her mother's silver locket, a change of clothes, what little money she had saved. She left behind the fancy dresses Constance had insisted she wear, the delicate things meant to make her appealing to potential suitors. The house was silent as she slipped out the back door and made her way through the awakening town. Gonzales was just stirring, shopkeepers opening their doors, the smell of fresh bread drifting from the bakery. Adelaide pulled her shawl close and walked quickly, her heart hammering. Kellan was waiting by the oak tree, 2 horses already saddled. He looked up as she approached, and something in his expression softened. "You came," he said. "Did you think I would not? I thought you might have second thoughts. What we are about to do will not be easy." Adelaide lifted her chin. "Tell me your plan." Kellan helped her onto one of the horses, a gentle mare with kind eyes. "Thornton Barrett is not a good man. I have heard stories about him from other ranch hands. He is cruel to his workers, crueler still to those who cannot fight back. I worked his ranch once, years ago. I saw how he treated a Mexican family he employed, the way he spoke to them, worked them past endurance. When the father complained, Barrett had him beaten and thrown off the property with no pay." Adelaide felt sick. "And my stepmother wants to give me to this man. She cares only for his money." Kellan swung onto his own horse, a tall buckskin gelding. "But Barrett has enemies, men he has wronged, debts he has not paid. I spent yesterday asking questions, sending telegrams. I found something interesting." "What?" "Barrett is wanted in New Mexico territory for fraud. He sold land he did not own, took money from settlers and disappeared. There is a warrant, but he has been operating in Texas under a slightly different name. Thornton Barrett instead of Thuron Barrett. Small change, but enough to avoid notice." Hope flared in Adelaide's chest. "So we can have him arrested. If we can prove he is the same man, yes. But that takes time, and he arrives in 4 days. We need to work fast." Kellan urged his horse forward, and Adelaide followed. "I know a sheriff in the next county who is honest, Tom Bridger. He will help us if we can gather enough evidence." They rode hard that day, pushing the horses as much as they dared. The Texas landscape spread around them, rolling hills and wide skies, the heat building as the sun climbed. Adelaide had never been outside Gonzales, and despite the circumstances, she felt a strange thrill at the freedom of it. They stopped at noon to rest the horses and eat the food Kellan had packed. Sitting in the shade of a cottonwood, Adelaide studied the man who had so quickly become her unlikely ally. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. Kellan looked at her, and she saw something raw in his expression. "I had a sister once, younger than me by 3 years. When our parents died, our uncle took us in. He was a hard man, saw Rachel as a burden. When she was 17, he tried to marry her off to a man twice her age. She ran away instead. I was working a ranch 2 counties over, did not hear about it until weeks later. By the time I found her, she had been traveling alone and she had gotten sick. She died before I could get her to a doctor. I am so sorry, Adelaide said softly. I swore after that I would never stand by and watch someone be forced into something against their will. When you told me what your stepmother planned, I saw Rachel. I cannot save her, but maybe I can help you. Adelaide reached out and touched his hand. It was a bold gesture, but in that moment it felt necessary. Thank you, Kellan. His fingers curled around hers, warm and solid. We will make this right, Adelaide. I promise you that. They reached the town of Curo by evening, a slightly larger settlement than Gonzales with a proper sheriff's office. Tom Bridger turned out to be a weathered man in his 50s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. He listened to Kellan's story, his expression growing darker as the details emerged. I have heard of this Thuron Barrett, Bridger said. Swindled some good people out of their savings. You say he is coming to Gonzales Friday, Kellan confirmed, under the name Thornton Barrett. I have a copy of the wanted poster from New Mexico. The description matches. Bridger studied the poster, then looked at Adelaide. Miss, are you certain about these accusations? This is serious business. I am certain I do not wish to be sold to a criminal, Adelaide said firmly. Whether you can arrest him or not, I will not marry this man. Bridger nodded slowly. I can ride to Gonzales with my deputy. If this Barrett is who you say he is, we will take him into custody. But I need more proof than a similar name and description. What about a photograph? Adelaide said suddenly. Both men turned to her. Constance has been corresponding with him for months. She showed me a photograph once, trying to convince me he was handsome and distinguished. If we can compare that to the wanted poster, would that be enough? It would help considerably, Bridger said. Then we need to get back to Gonzales and retrieve it, Kellan said. That is dangerous, Adelaide protested. If Constance sees me, she will never let me leave again. Then we will have to be clever about it. Kellan looked at Bridger. Can you and your deputy be in Gonzales by Thursday evening? We can. Good. That gives us time to prepare. They stayed the night in Curo, Bridger arranging for Adelaide to have a room at the boarding house while Kellan bedded down in the livery stable. Adelaide lay awake, her mind spinning with plans and possibilities. She thought about her father, wondered what he would think of all this. He had loved her, she knew that, but he had also been a trusting man, easily swayed by Constance's charms. Would he have allowed this marriage to happen? The next morning, they began the ride back to Gonzales. This time, they took a more circuitous route, approaching from the east so they would not be seen entering town. Kellan seemed to know every back road and hidden trail, navigating with the ease of someone who had spent years wandering Texas. As they rode, they talked. Adelaide told him about her mother, who had died when she was 12, about the quiet happiness of her childhood before Constance arrived. Kellan spoke of his years working ranches, the hard lessons he had learned, the beauty he had found in the open country despite the brutal work. Do you ever want to settle down? Adelaide asked as they paused to water the horses at a creek. Kellan was quiet for a moment. I used to think I did not. After Rachel died, it felt easier to keep moving, not to get attached to places or people. But lately, I have been wondering if that is just another form of running away. And what would you do if you stopped running? He looked at her, and Adelaide felt her breath catch at the intensity in his gaze. I suppose I would need to find something worth staying for. The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility. Then Kellan cleared his throat and turned back to his horse. We should keep moving. We need to be in position by nightfall. They reached Gonzales after dark on Wednesday, circling wide around the town to approach Adelaide's house from the back. The property sat on the outskirts, a modest clapboard building with a vegetable garden and a small barn. Lights burned in the windows, and Adelaide could see Constance's silhouette moving behind the curtains. "She keeps important papers in a box in her bedroom," Adelaide whispered. "The photograph will be there. Can you get in without her hearing? I know which floorboards creak." Adelaide had spent 20 years learning the quirks of this house. "But if she catches me, she will lock me in my room until Barrett arrives. Then I will create a distraction." Kellan handed her the reins of his horse. "Wait here. When you see Constance leave the house, you will have about 10 minutes. Get in, find the photograph, and get out." "What are you going to do?" He smiled, and it was the first time Adelaide had seen him truly smile. It transformed his face, made him look younger, less burdened. Something loud. Kellan disappeared into the darkness, and Adelaide waited, her heart pounding so hard she was certain Constance would hear it from inside. Minutes passed with agonizing slowness. Then, suddenly, the sound of breaking glass and crashing metal erupted from the direction of the barn. Constance's door flew open and she rushed out into the yard, lamp held high. "Who is there? Show yourself." More crashes and the frightened whinny of their old horse. Constance hurried toward the barn, shouting threats into the darkness. Adelaide did not wait. She slipped from the horse and ran to the back door, letting herself in with practiced silence. She knew this house like her own heartbeat, knew where to step and where to avoid. Constance's bedroom was at the front of the house, the door standing open. Adelaide hurried inside, going straight to the dresser where Constance kept her private box. It was locked, but Adelaide knew where the key was hidden, behind a loose board in the wall. Her fingers shook as she opened the box and sorted through papers and letters. There. A photograph mounted on stiff card. Thornton Barrett stared out at her with cold eyes and a stern expression. Adelaide grabbed it and several letters for good measure, then locked the box and replaced the key. She was out of the room and heading for the back door when she heard Constance returning, her voice sharp with anger. "Nothing but raccoons, making a mess of everything." Adelaide slipped out the door and ran for the horses. Kellan materialized from the shadows, already mounted. "Go, go." They rode hard into the darkness, not stopping until they were well clear of town. When they finally slowed, Adelaide was laughing breathlessly, the photograph clutched tight in her hand. "We did it," she said. Kellan grinned at her. "You are quite the burglar, Miss Owens." "I am quite the desperate woman, Mr. Sawyer." They made camp in a sheltered spot and built a small fire. By its light, they examined the photograph and the letters. The resemblance to the wanted poster was clear. The same distinctive scar above the left eyebrow, the same sharp nose. "This will be enough," Kellan said with satisfaction. "Bridger can make the arrest." Adelaide should have felt relieved. The plan was working. Barrett would be arrested, the marriage would not happen, she would be free. But as she sat across the fire from Kellan, watching the flames cast shadows across his face, she realized freedom was not the only thing she wanted anymore. "What happens after?" she asked quietly. "After Barrett is arrested and Constance can no longer force me into marriage. You will be free to make your own choices. I have no money, no prospects. Constance will never let me return to that house." Kellan poked at the fire with a stick, not meeting her eyes. "I have some savings, not much, but enough to get you started somewhere new. You could go to San Antonio, find work. You are educated, well-spoken. There are opportunities for women like you." "Women like me," Adelaide repeated. "You mean women with no family, no support, no future." "I mean women who are brave enough to fight for their freedom." Kellan looked at her then. "You are not helpless, Adelaide. You are strong. You will survive this." "I do not want to just survive," Adelaide said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I want to live. I want to wake up in the morning and feel joy instead of fear. I want to make choices because they make me happy, not because I have no other option. Then do that. Choose happiness. What if happiness is not a place I can travel to? What if it is a person? The words hung in the air between them. Kellan went very still, the fire crackling in the silence. Adelaide, he said carefully, you barely know me. I know you risked everything to help a stranger. I know you are kind and brave and good. I know that when I look at you, I feel something I have never felt before. Is that not enough to start with? Kellan set down the stick and moved around the fire to sit beside her. He took her hands in his, and Adelaide could feel the calluses from years of hard work, the strength in his fingers. I am a drifter, he said. I have no land, no house. I work for wages and sleep under the stars more often than not. I cannot offer you the life you deserve. You are offering me a choice. That is more than anyone else has ever given me. He reached up and cupped her face, his thumb brushing her cheek. If we do this, if we take this path, it will not be easy. People will talk. Your stepmother will be furious. We will have to build a life from nothing. I am not afraid of hard work. I am only afraid of living a life that is not mine. Kellan leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away, but Adelaide met him halfway. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, then deeper as weeks of tension and fear and growing affection poured out. When they finally parted, Adelaide was breathless and smiling. We should probably solve the Barrett problem before we plan our future, Kellan said, but he was smiling too. Probably, Adelaide agreed, but I wanted you to know, whatever happens, I choose you. Thursday passed in preparation. They met with Sheriff Bridger and his deputy at a spot outside town, showing them the photograph and letters. Bridger studied the evidence carefully, then nodded. This is solid. I can make the arrest as soon as he arrives. Do you know where this meeting is supposed to take place? Constance arranged for him to stay at the boarding house, Adelaide said. They were to meet formally Friday evening at the house to finalize the arrangement. Then we will be waiting, Bridger said. But Miss Owens, you should be present. He cannot complete a marriage without the bride. She will be there, Kellan said. But not alone. Friday dawned clear and hot, the kind of day where the sun beat down mercilessly and dust devils danced in the streets. Adelaide dressed carefully in one of the simple dresses she had taken, her mother's locket around her neck. Kellan stayed close, both of them tense with anticipation. The plan was simple. Bridger and his deputy would wait inside the house, hidden. When Barrett arrived for the meeting, they would make the arrest. Adelaide would be there to identify him, and Constance would have to face the fact that her scheme had failed. As they approached the house that evening, Adelaide's hands were shaking. Kellan took her arm, steadying her. You can do this, he said quietly. I will be right there with you. They walked to the front door together. Adelaide knocked, and after a long moment, Constance opened it. Her face went through a rapid series of expressions: shock, anger, fear, and finally cold calculation. Adelaide, I did not expect to see you. Where have you been? That does not matter. I am here now. Constance's eyes flicked to Kellan, narrowed. And who is this? A friend? May we come in? Constance hesitated, clearly torn between throwing them out and maintaining the appearance of propriety. Finally, she stepped aside. Mr. Barrett will be here shortly. I suggest you clean yourself up and prepare to be gracious. Inside, Sheriff Bridger and his deputy waited in the back room, out of sight. The minutes ticked by with agonizing slowness. Adelaide sat in the parlor, Kellan standing behind her chair like a guardian. Constance paced, shooting venomous looks at both of them. You are ruining everything, she hissed at Adelaide. Do you know what Barrett will do if you embarrass him? I imagine he will have more pressing concerns, Adelaide said coolly. A knock at the door made them all freeze. Constance smoothed her dress and pasted on a smile before opening it. Thornton Barrett was a large man, well dressed in expensive clothes that could not quite hide the cruelty in his face. He swept off his hat and nodded to Constance. "Mrs. Owens, a pleasure to finally meet in person." "Mr. Barrett, welcome. Please come in." Barrett entered, his eyes immediately finding Adelaide. He studied her with the detached assessment of a man evaluating livestock, and Adelaide felt her skin crawl. "So this is the bride," he said. "Stand up, girl, let me see you properly." Adelaide stood slowly, lifting her chin. "I am not a girl, I am a woman, and I am not your bride." Barrett's expression darkened. "Constance, what is the meaning of this?" "Adelaide has been unwell," Constance said quickly. "She is not herself." "Please, Mr. Barrett, if we could just discuss the terms." "I am perfectly well," Adelaide interrupted. "And I am not marrying you. This entire arrangement is void." Barrett took a step toward her, his hand raised. "You insolent little—" Kellan moved like lightning, putting himself between Adelaide and Barrett. "Touch her, and it will be the last thing you do." "Who the hell are you?" Barrett demanded. "Someone who knows exactly who you are, Thuron Barrett." The use of his real name made Barrett go still. His eyes darted to the door, calculating. "I do not know what you are talking about. I am talking about fraud in New Mexico territory, about settlers you swindled, land you sold that was not yours to sell." Kellan's voice was hard as iron. "I am talking about the warrant for your arrest." "You are insane." But Barrett's face had gone pale. Sheriff Bridger chose that moment to step out from the back room, his deputy beside him. "Thuron Barrett, you are under arrest for fraud and theft. Come along quietly, and this does not have to get difficult." The room erupted. Barrett lunged for the door, but the deputy was faster, grabbing his arm and twisting it behind his back. Barrett cursed and struggled, but he was no match for two lawmen. Within moments, he was in irons and being led outside. Constance stood frozen, her face white with shock. "This cannot be happening. You have ruined everything." "No," Adelaide said quietly. "I have saved myself." "You ungrateful wretch, after everything I did for you, your father would be ashamed." "My father would be ashamed of you for trying to sell his daughter." Adelaide walked to the door, Kellan beside her. "I am leaving, Constance. You will never control me again. You have nothing, no money, no prospects. You will come crawling back." Adelaide looked at the woman who had made her life miserable and felt nothing but pity. "I have everything I need. I have my freedom, and I have people who care about me. That is more than you will ever have." She walked out into the evening air, and it felt like breathing for the first time in months. Kellan took her hand, and together they watched as Barrett was loaded into the sheriff's wagon. Bridger came over, tipping his hat. "Thank you both for your help. Barrett will face justice for what he has done." "What will happen to him?" Adelaide asked. "He will be extradited to New Mexico to stand trial. Given the evidence, I expect he will spend considerable time in prison." Bridger looked at her seriously. "You did a brave thing, Miss Owens. Not many would have fought back the way you did." "I had help," Adelaide said, squeezing Kellan's hand. After Bridger left, they walked through Gonzales as the sun set, painting the sky in brilliant colors. Adelaide felt lighter than she had in years, as though a great weight had been lifted from her shoulders. "What now?" Kellan asked. "Now we decide what comes next." Adelaide stopped and turned to face him. "You said you were tired of running. I am offering you a reason to stay." "Adelaide, I meant what I said before. I do not have much to offer you." "Then we will build something together. We can start small, save money, maybe rent a piece of land. You know ranching, I know how to run a household. We can make it work." Kellan pulled her close, and Adelaide rested her head against his chest, hearing the steady beat of his heart. "Are you certain this is what you want?" A life with a cowboy who has nothing but the clothes on his back and a couple of horses. I am certain I want a life with you. The rest we will figure out as we go." He kissed her then, there in the middle of the street as the stars began to appear overhead. When they parted, both were smiling. "We should probably get married properly," Kellan said. "I will not have people thinking I ran off with you without making an honest woman of you first." Adelaide laughed. "Is this a proposal, Mr. Sawyer?" "I suppose it is." "Adelaide Owens, will you marry me? Not because anyone is forcing you, not because of money or land or anything else. Just because I love you and I want to spend the rest of my life making you happy." "Yes," Adelaide said without hesitation. "Yes, I will marry you." They were married 3 days later by the circuit preacher, with Sheriff Bridger and his wife standing as witnesses. It was a simple ceremony, no fancy dress or elaborate celebration, but Adelaide had never been happier. When Kellan slipped a plain gold band on her finger, she felt more treasured than all the jewels in the world could make her. They started their new life in a small house on the edge of Gonzales, renting from a widow who was happy to have reliable tenants. Kellan took work at the local ranches, building a reputation as a skilled and honest worker. Adelaide took in sewing and helped at the general store. The work was hard, the money tight, but they were happy. Months passed, and their small house became a home. Adelaide planted a garden and Kellan built her shelves for her books. They would sit on the porch in the evenings, watching the sun set and talking about their dreams. Kellan spoke of one day having his own small ranch, just enough land for a few cattle and horses. Adelaide dreamed of children, a family built on love rather than obligation. In the spring of 1884, Adelaide discovered she was pregnant. Kellan's joy was boundless, his protectiveness growing along with her belly. He built a cradle from oak wood, sanding it smooth and carving their initials into the headboard. Adelaide sewed tiny clothes and blankets, her heart full of anticipation. Their son was born in November, a healthy baby with his father's dark hair and his mother's blue eyes. They named him Daniel, after Kellan's father. Holding her son for the first time, Adelaide thought about how different her life could have been. She could have been trapped in a loveless marriage to a cruel man, her freedom and spirit slowly crushed. Instead, she was here, surrounded by love with a future full of possibility. Kellan was a devoted father, spending every spare moment with Daniel. Adelaide would watch them together, her husband's large hands so gentle with their tiny son, and feel overwhelmed with gratitude. This was what happiness looked like. This was what she had fought for. By 1886, they had saved enough money to buy a small piece of land north of Gonzales. It was not much, just 20 acres with a creek running through it, but it was theirs. Kellan built them a house, working every day after his ranch work was done. Adelaide helped when she could, holding boards and handing him tools while Daniel played nearby. The house was modest, just 3 rooms, but it had windows that let in the light and a porch where they could sit and watch their land. When they moved in, Adelaide stood in the empty parlor and cried, not from sadness but from joy so pure it hurt. "What is wrong?" Kellan asked, alarmed. "Nothing," Adelaide said through her tears. "Everything is right. This is ours, Kellan. We built this together." He held her close, their son between them, and Adelaide felt the completeness of the moment. They had started with nothing but determination and love, and they had built a life. Their small ranch grew slowly. Kellan bought a few head of cattle, then a few more. Adelaide kept chickens and sold eggs in town. They worked from dawn to dusk, but it was good work, honest work, and they were doing it together. In 1887, Adelaide gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Rosemary. She was as fierce and determined as her mother, with her father's steady temperament. Daniel doted on his baby sister, following Adelaide around and insisting on helping with everything. Kellan proved to be as good a rancher as he was a cowboy. He had a gift for handling animals and a head for business. By 1889, their small ranch had grown into something substantial. They had hired 2 ranch hands and expanded their herd. Adelaide still helped with the work, but she also had time now for other things. She started a small school in Gonzales for children whose families lived too far from the main schoolhouse, teaching them reading and arithmetic 3 days a week. One evening in the fall of 1890, as they sat on their porch watching the sun set over their land, Kellan took Adelaide's hand. "You remember that night by the river?" he asked. "When you told me you wanted to choose happiness?" "I remember everything about those days," Adelaide said. "I never imagined we would have all this. I thought I would spend my life drifting, never putting down roots. You changed everything for me." Adelaide leaned her head on his shoulder. "We changed everything for each other. You gave me the courage to fight for my freedom. I gave you a reason to stay. We built this life together." "No regrets?" Kellan asked. "Not a single one. Every choice I made led me here to you, to this life. I would do it all again in a heartbeat." They sat in comfortable silence as the stars began to appear, the sounds of their children playing inside the house drifting out through the open windows. Their ranch stretched out before them, modest but thriving, a testament to what determination and love could build. Adelaide thought sometimes about Constance, wondered what had become of her. She had heard through town gossip that her stepmother had been forced to sell the house, had moved east to live with distant relatives. Adelaide felt no satisfaction in her downfall, only relief that she was finally free of that bitter woman's influence. As for Thornton Barrett, he had been convicted and sentenced to 15 years in prison. Justice had been served, and Adelaide slept better knowing he could never hurt anyone else. In 1892, Adelaide gave birth to their 3rd child, another son they named James. Their house suddenly felt small with 3 children, and Kellan began planning an addition. Daniel was now 8, already helping with ranch work and showing his father's gift with animals. Rosemary was 5, reading at a level far beyond her years and constantly asking questions about everything. Their ranch continued to prosper. Kellan had developed a reputation for raising quality cattle, and buyers came from as far as San Antonio to purchase his stock. Adelaide's school had grown as well, and she was teaching nearly 20 children. The small income it provided was put aside for their children's futures, for education and opportunities they wanted to give them. One evening in 1895, as they celebrated their 11th wedding anniversary, Kellan presented Adelaide with a gift. It was a beautiful leather-bound journal, the pages blank and waiting to be filled. "I thought you might want to write down our story," he said. "For the children, so they know where they came from and how we built this life." Adelaide opened the journal, running her fingers over the smooth pages. "It is perfect, thank you." That night, after the children were asleep, Adelaide sat at their kitchen table and began to write. She wrote about her father's death, about Constance's betrayal, about the moment she learned she was to be sold. She wrote about meeting Kellan, about his kindness and courage. She wrote about their flight, the confrontation, the arrest, but mostly she wrote about love. About how love had saved her, had given her the strength to fight for her freedom. About how love had built this life, piece by piece, day by day. About how love between 2 people who had nothing but each other had created something beautiful and lasting. Years continued to pass, marked by harvests and birthdays, by new colts born in the spring and cattle drives in the fall. Their children grew, each developing their own personalities and dreams. Daniel became a skilled horseman, talking of one day expanding the ranch. Rosemary discovered a love of teaching and spent hours helping Adelaide with her school. James was the quiet one, always watching and thinking, with a gift for fixing things that were broken. By 1900, the new century dawning, Kellan and Adelaide stood once again on their porch, now grandparents to Daniel's first child, a daughter named Adelaide after her grandmother. They were in their late 30s now, weathered by years of hard work but happy in ways that ran bone deep. "We did it," Adelaide said, watching the sunrise paint the sky gold and pink. "We built something lasting." Kellan pulled her close, and Adelaide marveled that after all these years, his touch still made her heart skip. "We did more than that. We created a family, a home, a legacy. Our children will never have to fight for their freedom the way you did. They will grow up knowing they are loved, that they have choices, that their lives are their own." "That is all I ever wanted," Adelaide said. "For them to have what I almost lost." She thought about that young woman she had been, terrified and trapped, facing a future she could not bear. She thought about the cowboy who had appeared in her darkest moment, who had offered help without asking for anything in return. She thought about the risk they had taken, the life they had built from nothing but determination and love. It had not always been easy. There had been hard years, drought and disease, times when they wondered if they would make it. But they had faced everything together, and that had made all the difference. "You ever wonder what would have happened if I had not walked past the Silver Star Saloon that night?" Kellan asked. "Every day," Adelaide admitted. "And every day I thank God that you did. You saved me, Kellan. Not just from Barrett and Constance, but from a life of emptiness. You gave me everything that matters." "You saved me too," Kellan said. "I was so lost after Rachel died. I thought if I kept moving I could outrun the grief, but all I did was stay empty. You gave me a reason to stop running, to build something, to live instead of just exist." As the sun fully rose over their land, their ranch coming to life with the start of a new day, Adelaide felt the profound rightness of her life. She had fought for her freedom and found love. She had taken a risk on a cowboy with nothing but kind eyes and a brave heart, and together they had built something beautiful. Their children's laughter drifted out from the house, mingling with the sounds of the ranch waking up. Kellan squeezed her hand and Adelaide squeezed back, a simple gesture that held years of love and partnership. She had been sold like cattle, treated as property, nearly trapped in a nightmare of someone else's making. But she had fought back, had claimed her own life, had chosen her own path. And that path had led her here, to this man, to this life, to this profound and lasting happiness. The cowboy had made sure the sale never happened, and in doing so, had given her the greatest gift imaginable: the freedom to choose love and a lifetime to live it.